Again, anyone feel free to dive in. I'm just going to keep talking unless someone else starts interrupting me or posts a question. So,
hey, Courtney. Sorry to cut off your question there. I know it looks like Keith Marmer is on the call.
Oh, good.
For Danny and Christopher and David, from your perspective, Keith runs TVC, the University of Utah. It's the commercialization arm of the University of Utah. University of Utah is a phenomenal research university. And TVC, by several different metrics, is one of the best commercialization operations tied to a university in the country. And Keith, I know that you were going to be with us on the UAE trade mission. Now we get to do this on our computers. But I'd be curious, Keith, I think it'd be helpful if you could share a little bit about TVC, what you're working on, the success that you've had. I know you're working with many, many different companies. I want to make sure you have an opportunity to ask any specific questions to Danny and his team.
Sure. Thank you. Our focus is heavy in the life sciences and healthcare. Probably about 3/4 of the work that we do, even though we're a comprehensive research university, from a commercialization standpoint, does tend to fall in the life sciences and healthcare. We are pretty focused over the last few years in trying to create a longer runway for these technologies in the early stages and looking for partnerships that promote that runway. And what I mean by runway is technologies coming out of universities tend to be very early and need a lot of investment and probably equally a lot of talent and skills to bring these technologies to become viable products and services. And so we've been working aggressively to build programs that help us attract talent to these technologies. And some of this is obviously Utah-based, but we do cast a global lens, and we work closely with World Trade Center Utah to help us not only through the trade missions and things of that nature, but relationships globally. And we've learned that the talent can be entrepreneurial, technical, regulatory, since so much of the life sciences truly does fall into a global environment. It is not a local sport, as we like to say. So we have been, for example, raising a venture fund to invest in these companies and these entrepreneurs. We just recruited a management team to be engaged in helping to raise the capital, but we're also hoping that venture fund stimulates investment in these technologies, regardless of where they reside. So that some of that capital may be, for example, in the Middle East, where these companies can have a presence. We're also looking, because we have so many active companies in our portfolio, we've started over 400 companies through our office at the university. Right now, we have well over 100 of them that are active, that are still in business, but we haven't exited from. And we're consistently looking to strengthen a global network, because these companies do grow, and they grow beyond the support that we can sometimes provide firsthand. But relationships is probably one of the key things that companies keep coming back to us, regardless of size. And as they get bigger, relationships where we can make introductions not only to investors, but regulators, to commercial partners, it really runs the gamut. And so we work to try and have an active network that we can be making those relationships. So as Miles said, we're very active, and we've achieved some metrics that we're pretty proud of, but we know there's a lot more to do, and we know that that's going to come through partnerships such as these.
So that's a great statement, and thank you for that. Let me just say quickly, we have a lot of experience with this and exactly what you're talking about, because we brought a number of Emirati delegations to, and I can just give you as an example, Research Triangle, and to Pittsburgh, to Carnegie Mellon, and University of Pittsburgh. And we brought the Emirati delegations with the specific interest and focus of looking at how the universities, the research centers, and the local businesses create this ecosystem that is self-perpetuating in regards to bringing great ideas, thought leaders, and bringing it to business for an application that then gets commercialized into the marketplace. And the Emiratis are very, very interested in these models, and they're trying to replicate them in the UAE today, actually. And I would say to you, while it's important, I think it's very important for you to participate in Miles and Courtney's trade mission if you have the chance. But as one outcome of that should be an invitation to some key Emiratis that you meet to come to Utah, to come to your center and better understand how you're doing it and what your lessons learned are for it to be successful. Because they're trying to do the same thing and they're looking for best practices. And that could lead to partnership.
Absolutely. We welcome the opportunity to host those delegations. We try to do that as much as possible, not only because we're cognizant of the fact that there may be groups looking to replicate some of these models, but we learn a lot as well. We've tried to shift in the last several years from just worrying about what goes on in a local ecosystem to really taking a global mindset and that connectivity, as I said, because so much of what we do is going to depend on our companies being able to scale, and that scale is going to be in a truly global economy.
Could not agree more.
So,
Courtney?
good morning, gentlemen. This is Roy Patel, Courtney and Miles. Good morning. And I need to get contact with the Danny phone number, if it's possible. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I'm based in Provo, Utah. I'm heavily involved in a hospitality industry as well as international affairs. I'm heavily involved in India also. And I do have a good solid connection. I do on a part-time, over there also. I have a deaf and a blind school. We train the kids how to successful in their life. We teach them on a technical skill, and after they get out from school, at least they are independent and they will successfully do small work, nothing heavy. So if you guys are interested to open any branch in UAE, let me know. And I am involved in naturopathy. I don't know. I understand the allopathy and all that in the hospital side, but there is another system that we can cure a lot of stuff naturally also. And I can bring those. I'm involved in India also on those. So if you guys interested to set up some kind of in UAE, please contact me also. And I don't write an email, so good thing for me is a call.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Courtney?
Okay, great, sorry. So can you maybe focus on regulation and talk about what steps are necessary to get regulatory approval in the UAE?
So it's actually very important to get regulatory approval in the UAE for the simple reason that the UAE is usually the leader on regulatory matters in the GCC. So in the GCC framework, the Gulf Cooperation Council, the other countries of the GCC, including Saudi Arabia, they usually look to the UAE for leadership as they do regulatory reform, because the UAE is usually first to market, first leader in a lot of these areas. There, again, at the federal level, this is coordinated by the Ministry of Health and that's where one would go to sort of create an overall federal policy on something. But again, because this new federal authority is emerging and relatively new and taking over and acquiring leadership and power, it's very important to also be involved with Health Authority Abu Dhabi, or Department of Health Abu Dhabi as it's called now, and Department of Health Dubai. That's where the policy and the regulatory matters are determined and set. And it's usually done, the three usually do it in conjunction and are harmonious. But if you're trying to bring something, a new change to market with regard to policy and regulation, it's good to be having conversations with all three entities so that one doesn't play you against the other from the outside in. And my experience is that making sure you have good, solid, durable relationships with all three of those entities is really important. And depending on what the regulatory matter is, that's going to also serve you really, really well if you do it first in the UAE, more broadly when you go to Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Bahrain and the other members of the GCC.
Great, thank you.
Hi.
I think another question. Go ahead, Julia.
Hi, everyone. This is Julia Pappas from World Trade Center, Utah. I have the opportunity to lead out on our life science international engagement, and through that, I've been able to learn about and work with a lot of great Utah companies, and I've been seeing an exciting trend toward point-of-care devices. One example that comes to mind is Turner Imaging. They have a portable X-ray device, and it's so light that even I can move it around with ease. I've had the chance to try it. So you mentioned earlier, Danny, about family healthcare being very personal, and that makes me curious. What is the demand for point-of-care devices in the market?
Well, that's a great question, which my team and I will have to get you some more detail on because I don't know the answer. I expect that they're all over it, but it's just a level of detail that I don't know. It would make sense that there is a great demand and there's a great use of the existing technologies, but Christopher and I will try to follow up and get you a little more information on that, if that's helpful.
That would be wonderful. Thank you, Danny.
I might also note that I believe it's next week, we're hosting a webinar on healthcare information technology that's going to focus to some degree on technologies like that. So Honeywell is going to be talking about IoT in hospitals and so on and so forth. So regional executives will be talking a lot about how technologies, transforming healthcare provision now, but also in light of the COVID-19 situation globally.
Very interesting. I'd like to learn more about it. Let's connect after, David. Thank you.
Thank you. We just got a question about what is the UAE doing for COVID remediation?
When you say remediation, what do you mean exactly?
Dave, you want to clarify what you mean by that? Dave?
Yes. We're seeing testing technologies happen in America. One thing that we've done with Quantum IR is we're actually doing facial scans that connect to our AI to monitor people's fever, okay? So if you've gone to an airport, international airport, you walk through an area and they scan. Is anything like that going on there?
Absolutely. In fact, it's very sophisticated what they're doing and what they've been doing in that regard. I mean, they're as advanced as having drones go down the streets at night and in the plazas and the malls and disinfect the areas using drone technology. They have drones dropping off medicines. They're using all kinds of monitoring technologies. We're going to host the two airline CEOs tomorrow for a webinar, and they're going to talk to us about what they've done and what they plan to do when the airlines and business starts reopening here in a few weeks. And I expect I know that they already have the thermal imaging in place in the airports. I expect they're going to have instant testing in place, and before you even get anywhere close to the airplane, you're going to have to be tested for COVID-19. I expect that that's coming, and you're going to have to be tested on the other end when you get off. I mean, I'm just certain that that's how stringent some of these requirements are going to be if they're going to reopen an international hub that is one of the biggest and busiest and most traveled in the world, they're going to have measures in place that allow them to track, to test, to observe, to see what's going on. Those are going to raise privacy concerns for a lot of travelers, for sure, and how they deal with that is another question. I don't know. I mean, you give your blood at an Emirates check-in point in the United States, and it gets tested immediately for COVID-19, and you're fine, and you get on the plane. But does your blood sample get destroyed right away, or does it get used for something else somewhere along the way? Who knows? But these are all questions that they're dealing with right now, and they have to come up with some really good answers and some really good measures going forward, or they're not going to be able to maintain the hub network that the diversification of their economy has rested on and depended on over the last 15 years. So they're thinking about all of these things. And if you have some interesting, unique technologies that might help, you should be in touch with the UAE Embassy in Washington, with key officials in the UAE immediately, because there's probably going to be some interest. Now, every major American company that I know, from Abbott to Medtronic to, you name them, they're all engaged and involved with the UAE on this stuff. So maybe talking to some of those as well initially might be useful for you.
Thank you very much. We're also making a handheld mini version. So as the employee checks in, when he does his punch card, we've already evaluated through our infrared, and with AI, you can track your employee every day as they've come in and out, and what their fever level has been, that kind of a thing. So we're trying. That's
very important. And remember, the UAE is a huge transshipment point for companies like Amazon and their fulfillment centers and shipping and logistics. That's another aspect of the hub, the importance of the hub aspect of business in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and being able to ensure that those workers, when they come to work, are healthy and safe is really, really important to the logistics aspect of all these businesses.
As an indication of the degree to which Dubai's and the UAE in general are interested in adopting new technologies, Dubai Police is touting a new police helmet that has infrared technology that could scan a couple hundred people per minute to determine whether they have high fever. So they're very open to out-of-box thinking and applications of technologies in new ways.
That's amazing. Do we have time for one more question, Miles, or no?
I think we're pretty much out of time. If somebody's got a burning question, cut me off, jump in. Otherwise, let's start talking a little bit before we wrap up on next steps. We do these webinars, and we don't judge success by how good the substance is during the webinar. We judge success by positive action that happens as a result of the discussion we've had today. And the substance right today has been phenomenal. Thank you, Danny and Christopher and David, for your work, for being with us and sharing your perspective to our companies. And then all the companies that are tuning in, now's the time to be thinking through, based off of what we've learned today, the discussions, the connection that you are making with the U.S. UAE Business Council, start thinking through what the next steps can look like. I know that Danny and his team are very eager to use their network, their relationships to open doors for you and your business. World Trade Center Utah, we work very closely with Danny and his team, but the other organizations that Christopher mentioned as well. We've got very good relationships in the UAE. And so we all exist to help catalyze new growth for companies, to help accelerate your growth, whether it's on the outbound sales side or the partnership side. I think Keith, everything that he gave an overview of is exactly the type of partnerships that the UAE is interested in. So we look forward to following up with Keith and with Danny and everybody to look at some sort of a partnership with TDC and with the other companies as well. And finally, for the companies, as you're thinking through what next steps can look like, if there are costs involved, please be aware and remember that World Trade Center Utah has grant programs that are designed specifically to help offset some of these costs with growing internationally. So please reach out if you're a small business, less than 500 employees and some revenue caps, depending on exactly which NISCOs or industry you fall under. We want to make sure we're providing these grants to help offset the cost of paying for matchmaking. Right now we're not traveling as much, but you can also use it for, website optimization, market research, looking at IP protection, and other things as well. So please reach out to us so that we can use our grants to help accelerate the growth of your company. And with that, Danny, thank you very much. We're halfway through our 4 breakouts today. And so we'll go ahead and give you a chance to grab a quick bite of eat before we jump back on here in a half an hour to continue the discussion on a new vertical. But thank you all the companies for tuning in. Please reach out if you've got questions, anything we can do to assist to follow up on this. And we look forward to working with you to drive new positive action as a result of your participation today. Thank you all.